Hi everyone. Hi Ian.
Hey, how
Great
are
to
you?
be back again. I feel so refreshed. I know that the new year's been in by about 3 weeks, but I'm really glad that I've gotten the first couple of weeks of January done and I feel like I'm starting 2024. But on to the topic of the day.
Yeah, I hope you don't complain about this when we're done because
Joke one.
yeah. So Chris approaches me every 2 weeks with, "Hey, got an idea?" And this week, I think you did it on, for me, it was my Tuesday morning was when I woke up and read that, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know. What am I gonna do?" And I started reflecting on the week that has been so far, and I noticed that I had been complaining a lot. So, sorry, the topic title is what do you have to complain about? So I'm curious where you're going to take this, but I'll start. So I noticed that I was complaining a lot, and without getting into specifics, I had some projects that were thrown in my lap when somebody left the office, and I wasn't like I was given some information, but not as much information as I would give. So if I was leaving somebody in that position, and the information that I got, I think was a little bit scattered. So I really felt like I was lost, and I found myself complaining to anybody who would listen. So I'd go sit in one person's office. I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, can't believe what X so and so did to me," and blah blah blah, and they've left me in a lurch, and I feel like I look like an idiot, and I don't like this. And then, yeah, tell me more. And then I would complain some more, and then I would go to the next person and, "How you doing?" "Man, and I would just run in the same in some of the work that I do, we call that like getting on the hamster wheel. So you're just kind of like running.
Totally. I just wrote down the word cycle. Yep. Just
Yeah, I'm
recycle everything. Yep.
totally recycling it from conversation to conversation. So that Monday was like a big complainer day. I figured out most of my stuff, and that's fine. But when I read your note, I'm like, what's my theme for the week? And I'm like, I complained a lot yesterday, and I didn't like the way I felt because I was complaining about somebody else, and they're gone. Like I can't do anything about that, but I can do something now. And then it just so happens that I was teaching a workshop today, and the title of that is Working with Complaints. So I'm like,
So
yeah,
it's the definite
it's
theme.
it's all too perfect. I'm dealing with complaints all week long. I'm prepping for the workshop. It's all in the same avenue. Let's talk about that. So it's I always find it interesting when I start delving into a topic and going, why am I complaining? Like, why am I worried about
Mm,
something or whatever?
yeah.
And in the work that I'm teaching right now, it's in any complaint, there's something that's important to us, something that we're really committed to, and then there's an unvoiced request, something that we're not asking for. And I'm like, "Oh, if I just broke that down before, I wouldn't even need to complain about all these things. Like I could sit down and go, you know what? I'm missing this information. How could I get it? Um, I could call this person and ask these specific things if I needed them. Um, and really all that it came down to is I wouldn't leave somebody in this position, but I'm still capable of finding a solution, and I don't have to blame anybody for it. They did the best they could. They left what they left. That's just how life works sometimes. I've got to deal with it and roll with it, but I don't have to put anybody under the bus to get to the solution. So yeah, really, was it that big a deal where she left me? No, I called a bunch of people. I started to build relationships with people I didn't have before. Found solutions with those people, and we've figured it out. I have two more of those projects I've got to deal with, but I'll get there. But I don't have to freak out about it and complain to everybody and bring them into the cycle.
Yeah. And add them to the drama that
Yeah.
yeah. So when you proposed this topic, I then reflected. I had a very funny comment that I wanted to throw back at you, which I kind of did, which was so many things. But I don't actually have much to complain about at all. I don't have anything to complain about. And yet, it was just last week that I happened to be in surgery, and I'm going to share a funny story. Well, I think it's a funny story out of that surgery because I perceived it as funny, but when I looked back at it with the heading of what do you have to complain about, I could have easily made this story about a complaint.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that the day surgery works, you go in and you get assessed by like 7 different people over the period of 4 hours that I was there, because they're always checking who you are and what are you here for and all those sorts of things. So I'd gone through a few of those stages and I was being taken into the area just before going into theatre. So the anaesthetist assistant had come and collected me. He'd taken all my vitals. That was all great. And then my surgeon appeared and he was like, here, I'm going to put your catheter in. And I was like, okay. Well, he tried number 1, failed in my left hand. And he like, oh, that's not very good then. Anaesthetist turned up and went, oh, what are you doing? Go and do your day job. Don't give up your day job. That's my job. So anaesthetist comes around to my left hand and he tries, failed. So we went, let's try the other hand. I went, sure. So we've like, it's pretty painful. So we went over to the right hand and he got it in first go. But the banter between those two, I mean, they told me they'd worked together for 27 years and like, oh, there was all this banter and stories and just piling crap on each other. These are these 2 grown men who have years of experience as doctors and they're just kind of being
Kids,
idiots
the
in the
toughest.
playground.
Yeah.
Right. And anyway, so I've ended up coming home and still visible a big bruise on my left hand and a slightly smaller bruise on my right hand, which I just think is a funny story. However, it could have been a complaint.
Oh, for sure.
I could have complained about how terrible it was that a surgeon who's been doing this for 30 odd years can't actually find a vein in my body to make, like, there was all that story that could have been about it. And I was reflecting when you posted that topic, I was like, okay, so why did I not complain about that? Because it's so easy to drop into a complaint. You go into a store and you get served and then you can complain about it because of something or other, very much like your formula that you provided, that the 3 steps in why a complaint exists. But it's like, why did I not complain about that? What was it in me? And it wasn't the drugs.
Not yet, because it wasn't in
I
you.
didn't have the drugs yet. So what I realized is that I'd let go of any expectations of whatever that process was going to be. I was completely surrendered to the hospital process. I didn't know that there would be 7 different entry points, as I moved through that process. I didn't know that that I would even see my surgeon before going into theatre. I didn't know. I had no clue about any of that. I certainly didn't remember from last time I was in hospital, which was 20 years ago. And so I just surrendered in. So I dropped all expectations, which meant that whatever happened to me, it's just what it was. There wasn't anything that I was comparing it to or going, well, that's terrible. Because if I was complaining, I'd be like, well, that's terrible, which meant I would be comparing it to something else. And I just didn't. And then, of course, there's the recovery period and there's how long does the anesthetic wear off? Well, that took till like, over 24 hours later. Well, before the anesthetic wore off, I was trying to do some financial documentation which takes a bit of brain power for me. Not everyone, but it takes a bit of brain power for me. I didn't have the capacity. My brain was not functioning. I don't know if you've ever tried to do anything when you've had anesthetic the day before, but it's not a good look. And, you know, even in that situation, the guy that was trying to get the information from me could have complained about how terrible I was. In fact, he did the complete opposite. He's like, I'm just going to send you the documents that I need, the list of them. Whenever you're ready, you just get them back to me. So there was this compassion that had kicked in as well. So when I saw your topic, I was like, well, I mean, they were kind of exceptional circumstances that I'd just recently experienced that had no expectations. I'd surrendered to the experience and there was compassion. And I wondered, well, what if those two things were applied when we go into a complaint scenario? I wonder what would change.
Well, I think what's interesting with your situation in particular is that your expectations were minimal or non-existent versus my situation where I expected to have the information to do my job properly. And what's important to me is being able to do my job and to do it well and to be organized and on top of things, because that's how I operate the best. So when I'm set up for less than that, I feel scrambly. So, but if my expectations were, I've got what I've got and I'll figure it out like I always do, I don't think I would have had nearly the complaining power to go off to
Yeah,
all
the
the departments.
charge,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
charge wouldn't have been there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it just felt, I think what was interesting for me is it felt like infantile. Like
A tantrum.
why is this 47-year-old complaining about this? Like, it's not that big a deal. You're a grown ass man. You can figure it out, right? You can ask for help. You could call the individual who left you where they left you and ask for some clarity. But my expectations were different than what what I felt, or what I felt I would leave somebody in a position like that.
And that's often what I see in a complaint. Even in a really simple example of nothing, if we remove the surgery, which is a bit of an extreme, and there's someone leaving his stuff with extra things at work that you don't have all the information. If it's something a little bit more everyday, like, I don't know, ordering lunch from someone over the counter, it's this we often will default to, if we're internalizing for some reason, and we go, well, that's not how I treat me. That's not how I would have said that to myself. Like, I wouldn't say that to anyone else like that. We default into how we see the world, and then everybody else is wrong because they're not ever going to match how we would verbalize the, oh, here's your lunch. Oh, whatever it is that we're simply doing, we fall into everyone else needs to see the way the world, see the world in the way that we do. Again, there's expectations.
The expectation, the most mundane thing I can think of is being at the grocery store, and for some reason there's only one checkout. There's only one like cashier checking people out, and the line is getting longer and longer. And then you'll hear that person somewhere down the road like, "This is ridiculous. You need to have more people. Can you get more staff in here?" But from my perspective, having, I don't know, maybe I'm checking out my own stuff, and 30 seconds ago there was one person in that line, and they just happened to have a whole ton of things. And then you see the progress of something that's happening. But when somebody else wheels around the corner, they're in a rush. What's important to them is that they need to get home in time to do this and to do that.
And now they're going to be held up by another 20 minutes, or even if it's only 5.
And the information that they had at hand for them is, this is ridiculous because now there's 6 people in line and you've got one cashier. You got to be kidding me. Like, having the perspective to see that for me, it's brilliant to watch it happen and go, huh, I wonder what's going on there. Because I have no attachment to the outcome of that particular circumstance. I'm self-checking out my own stuff. I'm fine.
Yep. And that's because we have the control, right? So yes, I always choose the self-checkout so that I'm in control of however long it takes me. But then you can even get caught up in that as well because you can be waiting. And then if the assistant that's supposed to be monitoring that 13 self-serve stations isn't paying attention and you've got this item that it's querying you and they're not coming over to pay attention. I mean, even in self-serve, you can get a bit caught up in that. The other one is that whole merging with traffic, or I was sitting behind someone coming home from the shops yesterday, and they just happened to be driving at 50 kilometers an hour and it was a 60-kilometer-hour zone. And it's like, right, we're doing Sunday driving on a Thursday. Yay. Now, I could either complain about that or I got inquisitive and I changed lanes and I checked out who was driving because I'm like, it's got to be an old man. It's got to be like, nope, it was a 20-something just distracted with talking to the person in the passenger seat. But it's like, I could have complained about that, or I was just okay with, well, if it takes me an extra 1 minute before I get home.
Yeah. It is your complaint worth the energy and effort that you're putting into it? Is it getting you anywhere? And that's why I mentioned kind of the hamster wheel version of this, because I could have, and I know I've been this person, and I know other people are like this, where you tell this person, tell that person. I remember we had this big debacle with the installation of our pool. Julie still retells this story because it infuriated her so much that so every time somebody gets a pool installed by this particular company, oh, we had to work
It's the story.
Oh, the story comes out. And it's like 20 minutes, it takes forever, and it's the same story. And for me, once the story was told like once or twice, I'm like, I myself am done with it. Like it's I don't need to continue the narrative, continue the story. But for some reason, this story has a hold on her a little bit, and it's like it runs her.
And there's got to be obviously a win for her to retell that story, because there's you do get a bit of a feed, people will
Oh
go,
yeah.
oh yeah, that's terrible, and so you get the relatability, and people then, and they affirm some things, and that's the risk, isn't it, of retelling the complaint story, is you get the affirming message that this is good to tell again. So you get this mixed idea about whether that's serving you,
Yeah.
because it feels like there's a win when really it may not be serving properly.
And what's the win? Building relationship with one another, some camaraderie, some it's you and me together against the world, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But
And so we
does
do,
that outweigh the negative spiraling of it, of you commiserating in this?
and whoever pays attention to that in the moment of complaining, I know I don't.
I just need my stuff checked out. Let's go. Go 10 kilometers faster like everybody else. Ah.
Seriously, it's a Thursday. So yes, complaining is something I think is really easy to fall into. And the other thing I find with complaints is that this isn't just about the big complaint, and I know that's subjective anyway, but maybe the building of the pool might be considered a big complaint. But there are other subtle things like, oh, really? I was just reading something on my phone. Do you have to talk to me right now?
Sorry, you're talking about every moment of my life right now.
And we can get caught in that, and then that just it becomes an unconscious repeat that we say, or it's in the body language. you might stop yourself saying it. It's like, oh, yeah, what is it you wanted to say? And even in that, there's a complaint energy.
Mm.
And we do that. And I wonder whether that is also because expectations and compassion is missing. Well, expectations are in and compassion is missing. Because there's the expectation that you can just still be on your phone and no one's going to interrupt you because that's all you're doing. You're just doing your thing. And then, but when somebody actually wants to get your attention, to have some compassion that they might need something other than you, like than what your needs are.
Oh,
So I think there's differing levels.
I thought you meant the compassion. I wasn't thinking about it as like a self-compassion thing. Like I want someone to help to relate to me or whatever. What I was thinking of was when like people feel uncomfortable when people are complaining and they're stuck in a situation. So they immediately offer their advice. I know what you should do. You should do X, Y, and Z. But the X, Y, and Z are what you would do through your lens, through your experiences. Rarely is that advice something that will necessarily serve you exactly you. So that's why I was saying that if you can understand why, what's the reason you're complaining? What are you committed to? What's important to you? That's so important that this is a complaint for you. And then to make that hidden request, if unravel that hidden
Make
request
it
somehow.
so that it's revealed, so that hidden request is actually revealed.
So you can actually voice it and ask for the help or support or the thing that you need from that other person or circumstance so that you can get what you need out of it. So you're because a lot of complaining it's the surface level stuff, but it's not the real issue. So I'm complaining about the grocery line and there's no one here, and holy crap, I have to get home and get to pick up my kid at daycare. And if I don't pick him up by 5, they're going to charge me extra. Like it's that stuff that's underneath the surface that's not being complained about. It's this one. And then we take that out on the grocery store clerk and the people in the line and
then everybody and
first.
every one of our friends gets to hear about how terrible it was to stand in line because the grocery store was terrible. Yep.
And it had nothing to do with that.
No.
But
Yep.
maybe the hidden request is manager, would you mind opening up another line? I have an urgent, thing or whatever. Would you be able to help us out or something? Like, who knows what you can get when you really ask for what it is that you're looking for, as opposed to complaining and moaning about the thing that is the superficial inconvenience, let's say.
So we really need to identify whether our expectations are valid. Is that a fair thing that we've got to maybe look at when we're complaining?
Or maybe just look at what do I expect right now? And is that a reasonable thing that I expect that everybody should
And
serve me right now?
I must admit, if we go back to the surgery story, I didn't expect to have bruises on both my hands. I kind of had an idea that there would be noticeable, hole in my near my veins, but not 3 of them. But yes, we got to look at what those expectations are and whether how meaningful are they.
Yeah.
And then for me, I think what I automatically did was I gave compassion to these people who, sure, might have been doing this job forever. But also in the last 12 months, I've heard so many stories from my daughter, who's now a practicing vet, talking about how every single animal, maybe for people, doctors, it's every different, every human is different. So every time you put one of these things and try and find a vein and see where it's working, it's never the same. And she'll say, she's talked about how she'll have 4 attempts at it and one other person will come in and it'll just go in straight away. And it's not because she's any worse than they are at it.
And can you imagine? So you're probably a really good example of someone who had zero expectation and was kind of go with the flow with this. Like,
Because I had this
I,
background knowledge, right? To
yeah,
say,
I understand
if,
you're doing your best, right?
yep.
Wonder what's going on in their head. Like, oh my God, I've never had this where I can't seem to get it. I have a fake tooth. It's on one of these. Anyways,
Oh, okay.
so I had an implant done, and the doctor who's been doing this for years, he was trying to drill the socket or the hole, and he kept sliding off with the drill. And I wasn't mad at all. Like, everything's frozen. I can't feel anything other than I can tell that it's like a screw and he's
It
offline and
wasn't quite
he can't
going
he can't
in.
get it. I'm like, is everything all right? Are, are you having trouble there? Like, I'm laughing about it. So, I mean, if you can kind of go with the flow a little bit more and realize that other people are having off days too, things don't go well for them, I think it might relieve the stress for both them and you. And
And that
yeah,
charge that we kind of default to, right? Because that then drives the complaint that you're going to make. Yeah, so I think I automatically had compassion for it ain't going to get perfectly done, and just because you've been doing something for 27 years does not mean you're going to get it perfectly right the first time.
yeah,
Probably more likely to get it right than maybe the anaesthetist assistant. He didn't get asked to do it. Although I got this sneaky feeling that if he had turned up like 1 minute later, he would have kicked both of the surgeons out and said, this is my job, go away.
mic drop moment for him. Get out of my surgery.
So yes, a little bit more compassion and like you said, understanding what's really important. What's really the stressor.
So I think this is probably something that's come up almost in almost any of our circumstances where we're not sure exactly what's going on, is to slow down and ask yourself some questions, to investigate with yourself, be inquisitive, ask yourself some questions, have somebody else ask you questions to help you uncover what's going on underneath the surface. Because us in the moment on the hamster wheel, I don't know how much of the brain capacity is really firing at that moment.
No, we don't have a broader view. We have a very laser focused view
Yeah.
in that moment. Yeah. And we need to expand that. And that's what those questions will do.
100%.